Hey guys, welcome back to Ranger Survival and Fieldcraft. I'm Andrew, and what I have for you today is a video on small bush knife survival skills. We're going to take a small bush knife, which is a little bit larger than a regular knife, but smaller than a full-size machete, and do some survival skills: shelter, fire, water, and signaling for rescue. Stand by. Just like that. The small bush knife is nothing more than an overgrown knife or something smaller than a full-size parang or machete. This small parang is about 10 inches in cutting surface. The blade is designed to do three different things. Closer to the handle is going to be for finer carving skills. The belly of the blade is going to be for that large chopping and processing material, cutting down shrubs and trees. And then the tip, or the first few inches at the tip, are going to be for smaller controlled chopping and carving, as well as processing game. This knife also does baton very well. Bush knife also has the characteristics of a good survival or bushcraft knife, being that it has a 90-degree spine, so we can take that ferro rod and shoot sparks onto fine tinder very well, I might add. It also is high carbon steel, being that we can use it for flint and steel fire if we have to. Now we're going to hang up our tarp for part of our shelter. We're going to hang this tarp up first because it's going to dictate exactly where we place our ground shelter, which we'll make here shortly. But with our tarp, we get that quick deploy ridge line, hang it up, and then move in between our anchor points. If we get to our second anchor point, or the far anchor point, and we start to run out of line, a recommendation is that we put a stop knot at the end of that line to prevent our toggle from coming off if we're using that new toggle system. With this quick deploy ridge line, it's the same thing as before. All we have to do is go between our anchor points, around the second anchor point with our prusik, and then slip that toggle in and tighten it down to get tension on that quick deploy ridge line. Now, one thing I like about this quick deploy ridgeline system with the toggle is that it gives us the opportunity or ability to hit max effective range with our quick deploy ridgeline. This is about 30 feet of paracord, and the distance between near and far anchor point are almost 30 feet. We've got a few feet of cordage left that we can actually use, but if we had to, we could slide that toggle all the way down, put it through our third prusik, and then still be able to grab that stopper knot with the tag and cinch down to get our ridgeline up and hit those max distances if these are the only two anchor points that we have available in the field to set up our shelter. Good to go. With our tarp on our quick deploy ridgeline with those two prusiks left over, we're now ready to set up the rest of our shelter. We're going to create what's called an A-frame fly. The fly means that the tarp itself is up off the ground. There is space. We're going to use longer stakes as well as our guy lines to actually create that space and elevate the tarp up off the ground for a suspended shelter we're going to make. This is a great technique for creating a workspace in the field as well to work underneath if it's raining outside or we have bad weather. And now we're ready to head to the field and begin harvesting material. With our parang, harvesting techniques vary, and eventually we are going to become exhausted or get tired and begin to get lazy. But how we properly harvest material is using the belly of the blade again, like I mentioned earlier. We aim for that point of natural bend at a sharp angle and strike clean and fast to actually get one clean stroke so we can harvest that material, gather it up, and bring it back to camp. We bring all the material back to camp because we're going to bucket or clean off the excess branches at camp. This way we can actually get at those longer sections we need, but everything that's left over, we have it compiled in one single space where we can use it later for whatever purpose we need it. The type of shelter we're going to make is a suspended or elevated bench shelter, great for jungle and swamp environments, but our tripods need to be 2 feet in length for the legs and about 2 inches in diameter, and we're going to need approximately 6 tripods to actually support the structure itself. Now we have a basic 4-piece kit with us today. We have that small bush knife, we have the bush pot as you see, and cordage inside, both a mix of bank line and 550 cord, and we also brought that tarp with our quick deploy ridge line. So we have cutting, cordage, container, and cover all covered, if you will. But now we're going to use that cordage and actually construct our tripods. The proper way to construct a tripod using a lashing technique is using wraps and fraps. To do this, we just create a timber hitch by making a bight and twirling it around our finger, and then wrapping that with the excess through the loop we created around one stick. Wrap around all the legs of our tripods 4 or 5 times, tighten them down as best as possible, and then frap in between 2 to 3 times, tightening those, and finish everything off with a clove hitch, and we're done. All we do after that is set up the tripods and then put down the long beams and make sure they're set in place. This next part is probably the most demanding because it requires that we walk around, find the material of the appropriate size, harvest that material, and bring it back to camp, clean it or bucket back at camp, and then collect as much as we can, making sure it's the proper length, bring it to the shelter, and then finally lay everything out. What we're doing is collecting what will be the cross sections or horizontal sections or lattice work, and these sections are going to make up the actual bed of the bench shelter and finish off our shelter. We will not be using cordage to actually tie the horizontal pieces or the bed frame to the actual shelter of the bench. Everything is held together by friction and by our body weight except for the tripods that we lashed earlier. What we will do is actually take vegetation that we harvested from the other material sections that we kept in that one consolidated pile. Take that material and we're going to use that as bedding. That bedding will give us a nice comfortable place to lay down. We can exchange that bedding if it dies. If we're here for a long time with other green material, we can harvest from the area, or we could add more bedding on. But this bedding will make it more comfortable for us to actually lay on this bench because laying on hardwood surfaces is not very comfortable. This will actually complete our shelter. There is no other construction required, and we're good to go. This type of shelter is great for hot, humid environments like the one today. It's in the 90s somewhere and the humidity is up there. We're up off the ground, away from the creepy crawlies on the ground, and then we still have that convective breeze that's coming through to cool us down. This bedding actually acts almost like cordage, keeping the lattice work attached to our frame and the tripods. The cross sections, the horizontal pieces going across our bed, are not attached by cordage. The only cordage we have is for the tripods. Everything else is held in place by friction and gravity. So our body weight helps, but this vegetation on top keeps everything locked in place for us so it doesn't go flying off, and we still have a nice, comfortable bed to sleep in at night. We're going to make another pot hanger so we can suspend our bush pot full of water over our fire and bring it to a boil to make that water safe to drink. And so we harvest 2 Y poles that are relatively straight with those Y ends sticking straight up so we can hammer them into the ground, and a sharp point at the end to go in the earth. With these Y forks, we want to have the Y where one side of the Y is actually a continuation of the main body of the plant, and the other Y fork is just an offshoot. That way we can actually take our mallet or our baton and hammer into the top portion that is a continuation without breaking the Y fork. The horizontal section of our bush pot hanger is going to go right in between the handle of our bush pot and the body of the bush pot itself. That way we can just hang it up right on the Y forks, suspended over where our fire will be once we start fire. The bush pot itself has a flat, about 1/2 inch wide handle, which makes it great. Gives us better control over the fire, easier to pick up, and it cools off a lot easier, and it won't wiggle or fall off the bush pot hanger if we have troubles with it out in the field. We just go down to the water now, fill up our bush pot. It's about a 3-quart bush pot, so we're going to get 3 quarts of water out of this once we actually boil the water and make it safe to drink. We're going to go for the old bow drill for our fire lighting component of our kit. We didn't bring a ferro rod with us or any sort of ignition source, so we're going to go with friction fire. It's our cutting tool. It's a parang. It's not really designed to go into dead, dry wood. Although this is softwood, this is cottonwood, we don't want to go all the way through, or we want to minimize the use of our parang as much as possible to safeguard that cutting edge and take care of our cutting tool out here in the field. So once we get our beaver chew started all the way around, and we've flipped it over, cut back the same way, and chewed into this like a beaver, we can just take this, hit it against a tree, and break it off. Just like that. Qualities of a small bush knife like this, not being a full-size machete and not so small that it's just a bushcraft knife, is that we can still baton large sections of material very easily, but it affords us better control because it is a shorter tool, meaning that we can use the tip of that blade again for finer chopping to plane or flatten what will be our hearth board. Now, one thing to note is we use this excess material we batoned away from cottonwood that's going to be our hearth board. This excess material we then used as a makeshift anvil to help protect our blade from the ground. Luckily, there aren't many rocks in this area, so we're relatively safe in protecting our blade. But you also noticed that as we were chopping into our material, our hearth board, or what will be our hearth board, slipped off of this anvil. That's okay, because the curve in the blade of the parang won't bite into the earth. We can still hit this material as long as our hearth board is close enough to our anvil, and this will still help protect the blade from the ground because of that curvature. So the more you know. Versatility of a small bush knife like this is that we can use different areas of the blade for different tasks. We use that tip for finer chopping and even carving skills. The belly is what's going to be used most for chopping down and harvesting material. And then that portion closest to the handle we can keep very sharp because it's not going to be used quite as often as the belly. And that affords us the opportunity to do fine carving with that area of the blade. And we have better control, like when we carve our bow drill set. With all our pieces carved, we're ready for the burn-in. The burn-in is probably the most important part besides getting the ember itself. The burn-in affords us the opportunity to make sure the apparatus is working and that we set all the pieces in place as they will function when we actually go for an ember. So it's incredibly important to get this right. Last video, ended up using natural corded a couple of times with the bow drill set. Failed on those, and then used a shoestring, which I thought was 550 cord and was not 550 cord, and that failed on us, so we had to rely on 550 cord because the struggle was real last video. But this time we have 550 cord with us and we're ready to go. Not an orthodox technique, but a technique we can use nonetheless. Is just that finer chopping with the tip of the parang. We can start to chop and just make small cuts into the hearth board notch and then carve it away easily. Preparation is the key with anything in wilderness survival. With the bow drill set, all of the work is up front, which isn't that bad. We have to harvest the material, find the tinder, find the fire material. We have to carve the set. We have to fine carve the set, like with the spindle and the bearing block and the hearth notch. And then we have to burn in, and then finally, after all of that, carve the final notch, and then go for the actual ember itself. Here, from flash to bang, doing this in front of you, no cuts, no breaks. This ember took approximately 51 seconds to get out of this bow drill set. Hour or two of work for an ember that took less than a minute. Again, preparation is key, and making sure we have everything done up front properly the first time will pay dividends in the end. You've got a good ember when the smoke coming off of the ember itself after we get done with our bow drill has basically ribbons of smoke coming out of it. We could have continued and actually burned out more ash to form a coal or build up that ember out of the set itself, but once we have it full and we see it smoking by itself after it's spit out, that's how we know we're good. Once we're done with that, all we have to do is take our tinder bundle to the ember, not the other way around, and then just lift up the catch, place the ember inside that tinder bundle, blow it into flame. Here we're using cottonwood bark, which is very good, and we have extra cottonwood bark standing by that we can add to our tinder bundle once it's in our fire pit to actually get that lit. After that, we just build up the fire. It's windy today, so it's going to take a lot of firewood and larger sections of material burning for a longer time with our pot hanger and that pot suspended over top with cool water, approximately 3 quarts again, to actually bring that to a boil. So we're going to sit, relax, watch that fire, monitor it, and then get that water to a boil. Once water is at a boiling temperature or begins to bubble and gets that rolling boil, it's safe to drink. Generally, we could leave it for a minute or two if we wanted to make sure all the pathogens were killed in that water, but it's good to go as soon as we hit that boiling temperature. One thing we could do is create just a simple hook by harvesting another Y section of material from the landscape. We're going to cut out the neck of the Y below the fork, leave one of the forks long, one short, and then we have just a simple hook with a handle that we could use to actually secure the bush pot handle, get it off the pot hanger, remove the horizontal section, and lower it to the ground so it can cool. We could remove it by using the horizontal section itself, grabbing both ends and lifting up, but we take a chance spilling boiling water on ourselves or burning ourselves if those pieces of material are too hot from the fire. Once we got it cooled, now we can just sit back, relax, and drink some water. This is one of the best parts of the day where we get to sit back, rehydrate, refocus, and then move on to the next task. We haven't forgotten about all that green vegetation that came off the material we used to build our shelter. We can grab that green material now, use it for more bedding, or we can place it right on top of our hot fire, all those coals. When that material starts to burn, all that green vegetation will elicit a white smoke because of the moisture content within that green vegetation, and that smoke will build, and hopefully bust through the canopy so it can be seen by search and rescue aircraft from the air. It's a great ground-to-air signal because not a lot of smoke out there in the field. Everybody knows what smoke looks like, and usually that means something is going on over in that place. A human has been there. So a great improvised signal using just basic materials that we saved and collected as part of our shelter for a signal fire. Alright guys, I really hope you liked this video, a video on the small bush knife and some skills out in the field with a basic kit. If you did like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, leave me a comment in the comment section. I always appreciate your feedback. I want to thank you guys for everything you do for me, for this channel, for your likes, your views, your subscriptions, your comments, your feedback, and your shares. And I'll be back with another video as soon as I can, guys. Thanks. Just like that.